Chef's kiss. Anyway, no more test knits. Aubergine. Oh, it's so pretty. Okay, so it's almost at the bottom of my boob. And I was like, I look frumpy. Hi, Rosie. Wanna come sit? Come here. Hello, my name is Chloe, and this is episode 8 of A Big Knit Podcast. Here on my channel, we talk about knitting, yarn, sewing, sometimes books, sometimes my cats. Today, they do have the zoomies. They keep farting around. I've been waiting, trying to wait for a nice quiet time, and a nice quiet time is not arriving. So, I figured we'll just make the best of it. But if you hear some shenanigans, that is what the shenanigans is. Today, I have 2 finished objects and 3 whips to talk about. The first finished object is also what I'm wearing. This is my finished Calm Down cardigan by Lily Kate France. I knit this in the size 5. I'm using Laxton's Sheepsoft DK in the color Leyburn. The size 5 is one size smaller than what is recommended for my bust circumference. So my bust size is usually around 125 centimeters. This pattern is intended to have quite a large amount of positive ease. Let me double check. Between 25 and 30 centimeters of positive ease is what the pattern calls for. I did look at quite a few of the Ravelry projects before I started, and there were quite a few people who had said that they either knit the size down or had wished that they had knit the size down, and so that's what I decided to do. A couple of the interesting features of this pattern is, one, it's got quite big oversized sleeves. You can see I have lots of positive ease in my sleeves. It has these, the ribbing that runs over the shoulder and all the way down the sleeve here. It also runs along the sleeve hole pickup and down the body of the cardigan. I measured mine. My finished garment measurement is 136 centimeters, which is about 11 centimeters of positive ease. But really, when I feel it under here, it feels more than that. So I don't really know why that is, because I know that my bust circumference is not smaller than 125. It might be 123 or something. But this just feels more positive ease than 11 centimeters. I guess maybe one thing is that along here it has the ribbing. When I blocked it, I didn't pin out the ribbing or anything, so it's still kind of bunched up. So maybe that's what is changing that measurement a little. The other feature is down here at the bottom. It shapes the, what's that called? It's a little notch in the front. So when it hangs, it kind of hangs open slightly at the bottom, which is one of the reasons why I picked this sweater. I think it's really cool. I think those are the 2 most interesting features about this sweater. Yeah. So yeah, those 2 features are kind of why I picked this one over other similar projects. To finish, I picked buttons that I had already. I had originally thought that I was going to use a... Hi Rosie, wanna come sit? Come here. I had originally thought that I wanted to use a kind of a leather, a dark brown button. Hey, come here. Hey, come here. Oh, that's nice. What a good cat. But when I finished, I held the buttons that I had up to my sweater, and I felt that it looked very academic, I think is maybe the word that I would use, just because I picked a charcoal gray and then to use a dark brown leather button. I was like, it looks like I'm a university professor, which wasn't really the look that I wanted. So I ended up going with these gold ones, and I think they're perfect. I really like how they look. originally when I finished this pattern, or when I finished the cardigan, I didn't like it. And even after it was blocked, I put it on and I was like, I do not like this. And I realized that what I think it needs is like more styling, if that makes sense. Like when I tried it on for the first time, I was wearing kind of like athletic joggers and my hair was like up, and you know, I was just wearing kind of just like a regular like oversized t-shirt, and then so with also an oversized cardigan, I was like, I look frumpy. Not that there's anything wrong with being frumpy, but I was like, this is not the vibe that I wanted, and I didn't like it. I was like, oh my gosh, so much time was spent. But then I decided for the next day that I was okay, like I will like, you know, I will style my hair a bit more nicely. I will put on jeans and like a nicer t-shirt, still pretty plain, but just a bit more fitted. And then I put the cardigan over top of that. And I was like, okay, that makes all the difference. I also had at that point then also sewn on the buttons, and I think the buttons for me, like I realized that I'm sitting quite far away, but I'm hoping that you can kind of see it's like a little bit of a pointy flower design on the buttons, and I think that it's really cute, and it kind of makes the cardigan feel like a bit more stylish and less university professor. So yeah, I wore it all day yesterday. I wore it today over top of a dress, and I like it over top of my dress. So I think we're in the clear. I do really like it. I was just not feeling it with my original try-on outfit, and I think that this is a lesson that I eventually am gonna have to learn, because I have a tendency, like when I'm finished a garment, to put it on immediately without thinking like, what else am I wearing? Like, is my hair really greasy? Do I have like crumbs on my face? You know, like I think when you first try on a knitted garment, like you've worked really hard on it, you have an image in your mind of what you want it to look like, and if you just throw it on over something that you don't feel so great in, or you know, these are my pajamas, I'm gonna put my sweater on, you may be disappointed with how it looks, which I do all the time. I never learn. Maybe this time I might learn. Oh, I have a little cat just sitting on my lap. She's so sweet. Okay, so yeah, I don't have like a whole lot to report, I don't think. What else? Oh, okay, so this has a double knit button band. This is only the second double knit button band that I have ever done. So the first one was knit separately, and then I mattress stitched or seamed it on. And this one was I picked up all the stitches beforehand and then knit it onto the garment as I went. I much prefer this technique of picking up all the stitches first, because I kind of feel like knitting a button band, like a double knit button band, does take longer than you think it's going to, always. And so to finish the button band and for it to then already be attached to the sweater is magical. It was so good. And I also, I remember with my previously double knit button band, I really struggled with making sure that my buttonholes were placed properly, and I ended up not placing them very well. And what else? Oh, and figuring out how to where to bind off. So I think that on that previous sweater, I didn't quite nail the length of the button band. Like, it was maybe 1 or 2 rows off. And this one, I'm hoping you can see. It's perfect. So yeah, I really like that technique. I will be using that in the future. It looks so clean. I was showing my boyfriend, I was like, look at the sweater that I made. And he's like, wow, that, you can't even tell where the button band starts. And I was like, I know, it looks so good. So I'm really proud of kind of the finishings on this sweater. Hi, yeah, so sweet. Yeah, I'm really proud of the finishings. I think I did, took my time, make sure that it looked all right, and kind of it ended up being a piece, like a garment that I think I will get a lot of wear of. I think it's very practical. It's warm because it's wool, but it's not too warm because it's a cardigan, which is awesome. So that's that. That's my Calm Down Cardigan by Lily Kate France. I'm a big fan. Okay, my next finished object is the Oxbow socks by Andrea Mowry. So I knit these as part of her Oxbow cowl challenge. Hey, knock it off. And it's I guess like a sock knit along that she runs American Thanksgiving weekend every year, where people attempt to knit a pair of socks in 4 days. I am Canadian, so I did not have a long weekend. I still somehow managed to finish. I have literally no idea. I have never knit a pair of I did not expect to finish. I was like, oh, like this will be motivation to cast on. But then I finished on Sunday night. And I even had about half a day where I couldn't knit on these because I had snapped one of my interchangeable needle tips. So I had to go to the yarn store and get a new set of needle tips. And I still somehow managed to finish. It will probably never happen again. I will say that because this pattern uses like knits and purls, knitting so much in that one weekend, like so many knits and purls, I think also paired with the fact that it's a sock pattern, and so knitting with a smaller yarn on a smaller needle, I do tend to have a tighter gauge, like a lot more tension in the yarn. I will say that my hand, like I knit continental style, so my picking, I don't know. The hand that I hold the yarn in was a bit stiff. So for also that reason, I probably wouldn't try to take part in the challenge again, but it was kind of fun to do it, to prove that I could. And it's one of those things where it's like, great, now I have a pair of socks. The yarn that I used for these is a Canadian dyer based in Ontario called A Wanderer and Her Wool. And she does kind of like nature themed mystery sock sets. Not every month, but some months. And this was the September sock set. I don't actually know if the colorways have names. I'm not sure. But I really like how it turned out. It's like really earthy. It's a combination of like very light blue grays and some rust and green. And then of course the contrast color was this like gold yellow. And the picture that it was inspired by, like when she's, you don't necessarily want to buy a total mystery skein, right? Like there's some colors that I like and there's some colors that I don't like. And so she shows the picture of wherever it is that the skein set is based on, and also a color story. And so the yellow is, I think, like golden larches, which is like if you don't know what that is, it's just like a larch is a type of tree, and in the fall they get like the most insanely beautiful yellow leaves. Yeah. About these socks, they're nice and squishy. So the Oxbow sock pattern is, I guess, a stitch that Andrea Mowry has used in a couple other designs, and it's a combination of like knits and purls, but it's very easy to memorize. After the first, it's a 4-row repeat, so after the first 4 rows you're like, okay, got it. Nice and squishy. I do find them very warm, And so I don't know if that is because it's a superwash yarn. Maybe. I do have a couple other pairs of socks in superwash yarn, and for some reason, like, these ones just feel extra warm. So maybe the yarn is a little bit thicker. Maybe it's because of the texture. I don't know. Not a bad thing, but I noticed that I wore them in my boots. Oh, to my office Christmas party, or sorry, our office holiday party, and I was like, oh, I'm sweaty. But it was also hot in there, so I might have to report back. The one thing that I would mention is that I've only worn these once, and they are more felted on the heel than my other ones are that I have worn a lot. So I don't know why that is. I was under the impression that superwash wool didn't really felt. But I love the color. I think they're really pretty. I also have, I think, finally gotten the length right. I've had a difficult time trying to estimate how long to make my socks, and I either make them too long or too short. These ones seem to be pretty good, although now that they're felting along the back, it might shorten them a little, so I might have to keep that in mind. I'll see how that goes. I knit the size 4, which is the adult medium, and I believe that corresponds to a 72 stitch cast on, and I used a 2.25 millimeter needle, and so I think I found that in terms of like circumference, that seems to be my preference is 72 stitches cast on a 2.25 millimeter needle. So those are my Oxbow socks. Yeah, like I mentioned, I probably won't be trying to knit any more socks in a 4-day period, but it was kind of fun to participate. I didn't win the prize though, just too bad, but that's okay. So my first whip is coming along pretty well. This is a test knit for Sari Nordlund. It's her Vivi pullover. And last time I filmed, which was 2 weeks ago, I had the yarn, but I don't think I had cast on. And now I have just been motoring through this. So for her test knits, you only need to knit the yoke until you're joined in the round, you knit the neckband, and you only have to knit one sleeve. I, as of yesterday, have joined in the round, so I've knit like 3 centimeters just to kind of hold it together. And this morning I picked up for my sleeve. I've only done, I think, 4 rows on the sleeve, but it's coming along pretty good. The deadline is January 2nd, I think, so I still have like quite a lot of time, but I think what I'm going to try to do is I will try to finish the sleeve maybe in the next week. Like I don't feel like I need to rush it. I have been working on this quite a lot over the past week, so I think that if I wanted to redirect some energy to other projects, I'm now in a pretty good place to do that. But yeah, over the next week or so, I think I'll try to finish the sleeve, and then I'll do the neckline, and then from there it's just, there's no pressure to do so, because at that point I've completed what I needed to. Oh, it's so pretty. So I am finding this cable pattern. I'll show you the back panel because that is a bit easier. I'm finding the cable pattern like very intuitive. It's an 8-row repeat, and you do one set of cables every 4 rows, and the other set is every 8 rows. but every 4 rows you're doing cables. I'm really hoping that this is coming across. I realize that maybe one of the challenges of using a dark purple yarn is that over camera, I think it can be hard to photograph. Oh, it's so pretty. Okay, so the sweater that I'm going to end up with is not actually the same as what you would if you knit this when it's released, because when she sent the pattern, all the charts had these cables twisted the wrong way. So mine twist from the inside out, like I believe it's called a horseshoe cable. I'll stretch this out so hopefully you can see. Yeah, so it twists from the inside to the outside, which is actually wrong. Someone commented, she's like, I went and looked at Sari's Instagram, and I think the cables are going the wrong direction. And the lady who's writing the test knit was like, yep. So actually, the sweater has the cables here run from the outside to the inside. Like, I think I would have preferred that, but also by the time that this was realized, I had already joined in the round. And like that is really the bulk of the knitting for the test knit. And I was like, it still looks really good. and they did say, they're like, if like there's no need to rip back if you don't want to. And I was like, I will not be ripping back. I am done the yoke. Like I'm not gonna restart to switch the direction of the cables. Oh, but I can't wait. I have had this yarn in stash for a while. Actually, I don't know. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted. I will start by talking about the pattern and then I'll talk about the yarn. So the pattern is not all over cables, but it's typical Sari Nordlund style where it's got the cable panel on the front and the back, and then along the sides and on the underarms it's in a different stitch. So for this one it is reverse garter stitch, reverse stockinette stitch. So on the wrong side it's stockinette and all the purl bumps are pointed out. It is a drop shoulder construction. It uses 2x2 cables, 3x3 cables, and a little bit of like a few twisted stitches, but nothing crazy. And I found it so easy to knit on because it's a very easy cable pattern to remember. So that's been really nice. I believe this pattern is supposed to have around 20 centimeters of positive ease. I am knitting the size 6, which should be a bust circumference of about 145, so that would be bang on for a 20 centimeter of positive ease sweater. I cannot wait to wear this. I love this color. It's like eggplant purple. I love the cable pattern. I think it's really beautiful. There we go. Open that up so you can see. I think it's going to be perfect. I can't wait. So the yarn that I am using is, I'm holding a mohair together with a sport weight. The pattern calls for knitting for olive merino, held with knitting for olive soft silk mohair. My sport weight yarn is obviously quite a lot thicker than a knitting for olive yarn, and I'm still getting like tons of drape. It's still quite airy, and it's not bulky. So I think that this pattern is very versatile in terms of what kind of yarn you can use. The yarn that I'm using is Sonder Yarn Co. Sunday Morning Luxe Sport in the color Ritual, which is It's kind of like a muted eggplanty purple. And yeah, again, I've had this in stash, I think for about a year, but maybe not quite that long. It's hard. It's all blending together. I am really excited to finally use it. I really like Sonder Yarn Co. I'm currently knitting another sweater also with their yarn. And then I have one more sweater quantity. But then I would have to buy more. So this is 300 meters per 100 grams, and the recommended gauge is about 24 stitches per 10 centimeters. I am holding it with a mohair, so I've opted for a bit of a looser gauge. The mohair that I am using is, I believe it's, hang on, maybe I can pull the ball out, the tag. There we go. It is Handmaiden fine yarn, super kid silk. So it's 70% fine kid mohair, 30% silk, in the color aubergine. So French for eggplant, which is one of the very few French words that I actually remember from high school. And this is a chunky skein. It is 125 grams and it's 1,000 meters. So to get over a sweater, like I bought 2 skeins of this yarn and that's all I need. And my local yarn store wound it for me because they have an electric yarn winder. So I was like, there's no way in heck that I'm taking a 1,000 meter skein of yarn home and winding it myself. Could you please wind it for me? And they did. I have used this mohair before. I used it in my Plata sweater that was a test knit that I did last year for Clow from the Craevea, and it holds up really well. But I like this a lot. I'm getting distracted, of course, but I'm really looking forward to having this. I will say, like, when I found out that the cables were going the wrong way, I was like kind of annoyed about it. I was like, that seems like a pretty big mistake to have in a chart before you send. Like, you would think that when you send out the pattern to the test knitters that you've done a once over and, you know, made sure that the charts are correct. But also, you know, people make mistakes. And for me, like, the important thing is that it doesn't actually change the sweater, right? It's just the cables are going the wrong way. It's not that like the stitch counts are wrong or the sizes are wrong. Like, I'm still gonna get a really beautiful sweater that fits me the way that it's supposed to fit me. And that's really what I care about. It's funny though, because I'm actually looking at this middle cable and I can see, because one of them is like a right leaning cable and the other one is a left leaning cable. And which way is that? My right leaning cables are a little bit tighter than my left leaning cables, which I did not know about myself. So, oh no, I'm losing a stitch. Let's pop that back on. There we go. Okay. Oh, so one last thing. My goodness, my brain is all over the place. So I picked up for the sleeve this morning. We have a coffee shop downstairs. I went and I got myself a coffee and a muffin just to kind of like get out of the house. I work from home a lot, and so I've been trying to find more opportunities to just go and be elsewhere rather than being at home. So I was there and I picked up the stitches, and it tells you how many stitches to pick up. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna start with my regular, tried and true pickup rate, which is 5 in every 7. And I did that, and I was 20 stitches short around the sleeve, and I was like, oh man. So I added that as a comment in the pattern just to be like, oh, for future testers, like the pickup rate that I used, which got me pretty much bang on the stitch count that you needed, was 6 in every 7, which seems like a lot. And I thought about just doing the 5 in every 7 and then knitting a different sleeve size, like, you know, it would just be smaller. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, you're testing, so you probably shouldn't do that. And also, I feel like Sari is a very capable designer, and if she said, like, on my stitch gauge is bang on, so like if she says that I need this many stitches around the sleeve, then I think I need that many stitches around the sleeve. Trust in the process. So that's my Vivi pullover. I am really looking forward to it. I am, for a moment there, I was like, do you think I'll be done before the end of the year? Like, I still have over 2 weeks, but I don't think so. I don't think I'll be done before the end of the year. And I don't want to be done before the end of the year, because I want to enjoy it. It's really nice to knit. I'm really liking it a lot. Okay, so moving on, my next whip is socks. And that's funny because I was working on it, and when I have not knit very much. I've knit this. So I've knit the ribbing, and I've knit 2 repeats of the stitch pattern. These are the Totally Tessellated socks by Andrea Mowry. If you're familiar with like the Tessellated the Tessellated patterns, she's got a whole selection of them. Sorry, I totally forgot I had tea. It's cold now though, so that's kind of a bummer. It is 3 different yarns. One of them is supposed to be a Sari alpaca, and I do have Sari alpaca in stash that I could use. And I almost did, and I really thought about it. And the thought of wearing Sari alpaca on my feet gives me the ick. I'm not doing it. So I changed that. But it is 3 different yarns. So my main color, which is what I've started the ribbing with, hang on. I suppose I should hold this up so you can actually see. I am very far away from the camera. I'm hoping that you can see it. It's very, very early on. So the main color that I have is this one here. It is Sunday Fiber Co. Barefoot sock, I think, and it is a Eco Superwash, and it's in the color Creamsicle. This past year, I bought an entire sweater quantity of DK weight yarn in this color. Sorry, no. It was half this color and then half lavender, and it's so beautiful. And I got it, and I was like, this would look so bad on me. I am not a pastel orange girly. And so I gave it to my brother's girlfriend because she crochets, and I think it's a color that those colors would look good on her. So I was like, do you want this? And she was like, that looks so nice. And so I gave it to her. Very expensive gift, but I was never gonna use it. So I would much rather that yarn go to someone who's gonna probably use it and like it and think it looks good on them, and this yarn on my face, like around my face, no. All that to say, I do have sock yarn, like I have this ball of sock yarn in that color, and I do like the color a lot. One of my contrast colors is this. It is, I think, Bramble Ridge Yarn Company or Bramble Ridge Fiber Co. It's their sock yarn in the color Hot Coral. This is the yarn that I'm using instead of using Sari alpaca. And my color changing yarn, the pattern calls for Spin Cycle. I cannot get Spin Cycle easily. There's, I think, 3 yarn stores in my city. None of them carry Spin Cycle, and I'm not paying for shipping. So this is Earth Yarns I think it's Spiral Grain Sport or something like that. So it's a sport weight yarn. It's color changing. It's a very thin sport weight yarn. Like when I look at the strand, I think it's very similar to a fingering weight, but like that's fine. And when I started working on this, I knit the ribbing and I knit, just a couple of repeats of the pattern, and I was unsure about the color combination. But at the time I was knitting it and it was dark. Like it was dark outside, so the lighting in here was just like a couple of lamps. And I was like, I don't know that I like it. It's light now and I like it. So I haven't touched it since the day that I cast it on. I made it this far and was like, I'm just gonna put it away for a while. And I'm glad. I wasn't even initially planning on talking about it today, but I thought I would, and I'm glad that I did, because now I know that I actually do like it, which is great. I will continue. Because it is 3 skeins of yarn, it is not particularly mobile, which is too bad, because a sock would normally be what I would take to the office on days that I work in the office, or like on the bus or something, but not manageable with 3 skeins. So my last whip, I'm dying to show the whole thing, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wait for my next podcast episode in 2 weeks, because then Christmas will have passed. I'm using an Advent, and I opened my Advent early because I wanted to knit the yoke of the sweater. But I don't want to spoil anyone's surprise if they have the same Advent that I used. But this is also a test knit. This is the Kintra sweater that is designed by Clow from the Creabea. I don't know why, but I kept applying for test knits. I've done so many test knits in the past year, and I think maybe next week I'm going to do a video on probably my winter knitting plans. But at the end of the year, I do want to do like a make 9 video. I think that would be super fun. And one of the goals that I have for next year is like no more test knits. Just wait for the pattern to be released. Like, what's the rush? But that being said, I have loved this sweater. It is across the yoke, it's 1x1 color work, and it's a circular yoke sweater, but then the yoke is finished with raglan increases, which, like, the fit, chef's kiss. It is so good. I knit the Nick sweater, which was my first circular yoke sweater, and I like it, but the fit is not one that I would want for every sweater. It's okay for one sweater, or maybe 2 sweaters, but like, I wouldn't want it for every sweater. The fit of this sweater is immaculate. I put it on a try-on cord this week because I wanted to start the sleeves, and I was like, okay, I've knit, again, a few centimeters, like 2 or 3 centimeters of the body, just to kind of cement it, I guess. I don't want the stitches, like if I only do 1 or 2 rows after splitting for sleeves, they might get stretched out and look weird. So yeah, I've done a few centimeters under the sleeves, and I tried it on this week, and I was like, oh my gosh, like the fit, especially across the shoulders, is so good. So good. And the color work was really, really fun. I won't get too much more into that because in 2 weeks I want to talk all about it. But I am 3/4 of the way done my first sleeve. I'm using Sonder Yarn Co. Sunday Morning DK in the color Wanderlust, which is this really nice forest green. The difference between the DK weight and the sport weight yarn is that the Andrea Sunday Morning DK is 75% BFL and 25% mashup. The sport weight is the Sunday Morning Luxe Sport, and it's 65% BFL, 25% mashup, and 10% cashmere. And there is a difference in how it feels. So the DK weight, which is no cashmere, it's not rustic, like it, for me, like I don't have particularly sensitive skin, but there's zero prickle, but there's texture. Does that make sense? Like, it's got some body to it, you know? It's a 2-ply, so like I don't know that it would be great for cables, because usually you want like a 3-ply for cables. Let me just make sure that that is true. Yeah, it's just a 2-ply. But it's like, it's got some like body to it, if that makes sense. The sport weight is a lot drapier, for one. And it just feels a lot smoother. Yeah, smoother. This has more texture, this is smoother. That's how I would describe it. I almost feel like a little like orchestra conductor. Anyway, I believe that that is the end of the knitting content today. I have some fabric in stash. This is a bit of sewing chat, but I have some fabric in stash that I would really like to make, and I have quite a few dress patterns picked out. I love dresses, but I find it difficult to find ones ready to make, like ready-made, ready to wear at a store that fit my style in the color or print that I like, because I don't know. I don't think that my style is particularly unique, so I don't know why it is that I have such a hard time finding things. But I figured this year, well, 2025, I've sewn a couple of things in 2024. This dress that I'm wearing now being one of them, and I love this dress. So even though I don't really enjoy the act of sewing all that often, it's like very affirming to me to be like, okay, like even though you don't love it, it's a weekend worth of work and you get a garment that you love and you wear all of the time. So that is kind of the mentality that I want to go into in 2025. I will say the biggest barrier that I face when it comes to sewing is the fact that a lot of the patterns that I want to make are sold digitally in those PDF patterns. And for this dress, the Willow dress, I bought the pattern and I taped together 50 pieces of paper. And the act of doing that is soul sucking. I'm sure that there's people out there who like that process. I am not one of them. I hate it. And so even though I had other patterns picked out, I was like, I don't have it in me to tape together another 50 pieces of paper. And so it's actually been probably like the biggest barrier for me. And I realized that all of these patterns are, when you buy the digital version, you are also provided like a copy shop file where you can take it to a store and they print it on a large piece of paper. And there still might be, depending on the pattern and whatnot, there still might be a couple areas like where you have to tape something together. I'm not sure if that's true, but it could be, because the patterns are usually over, let's say 5 or 6 pieces of large paper. But I can manage taping together 6 pieces of paper. That is fine. And when I realized that, my mind was blown. And so this week I sent, I think, 6 patterns that I had favorited but hadn't purchased because I just didn't want to tape them together. So I bought them, I sent them to the copy store, like not too far from my place, and I went and picked them up yesterday. And so right now I have a giant roll of massive paper sitting on my dining room table, and I'm really excited to kind of like get into that. So that's really exciting. Okay, I'll take just a couple minutes to talk about books, and then I'll wrap it up. So over the past 2 or 3 years, these 3 books have been 3 of my favorites. This one is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, and this is the book that I recommend to every single person. I have gifted this book, well, not this book, but I've gifted the book to my ex's mom when him and I were still together. I gave it to her for Christmas. I've given it to my friend. I've given it to my brother's girlfriend. I've given it to a different friend, and I recommended it to my boss, and I think she read it. I recommended 2 books to her, and she read one of them and said it was excellent, and I think this was the one. But it's a really beautiful story. It's set in Iran, and it's kind of like a love story, but you know from the first chapter that they don't get married, like they go their separate ways, and so you know that at the start, and then the book is all about like when they were younger and they met, like what their love story was. And if I could recommend only one book to anyone ever, it would be this one. Loved it. So good. She has another book called The Lion Women of Tehran, also set in Iran. And it was also very good, but this one to me is like a 5 out of 5. And I don't often think that books are 5s out of 5. The other one I would say was like a 4.5 out of 5. Like it was really good, but it wasn't like that extra excellent, if that makes sense. Next is Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I have read, she released this book. It's up there, oh no, you can't see it. She wrote Yellowface, which was a book that she released this year that got like very popular. And she also wrote The Poppy Wars, which was how I learned about her, which is a trilogy, like a fantasy trilogy, and it was excellent. So everything that she has written that I have read is excellent. But this one I thought was, it's not, in my opinion, it's not better than The Poppy Wars, but I think it's more accessible, if that makes sense. Like The Poppy Wars is like a fantasy. It's got like, I think I read it quite a few years ago, but like it's got some magic to it. It's a trilogy, so you have to like be prepared for the fact that there's 3 books. This one is fantasy, but it's not as fantastical, if that makes sense. And it's just a singular book, and it's set in Oxford, like Oxford, England. Oh, it was so good, so good. I highly recommend this one. And finally, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin was a book that I read that I didn't expect to like very much, but then it was like 5 out of 5. And it's all about video games and like video game development. I don't know anything about video games. I don't care about video games. I read this book and was like, should I start playing video games? And then very quickly was like, no, we don't need, that does not interest you. But this book was so good, and it's all about kind of like not necessarily romantic relationships, but like interpersonal relationships, and like working with partners on a business, and video games. And it was like the one that I read this year that surprised me, because like I said, I didn't think I was gonna like it, and then I loved it. So those are 3 books that I am giving as gifts for Christmas this year. And they are ones that like I recommend to people all the time. And so if you're looking for a book, I've got a sort of love story, I've got a fantasy, and I've got just like a regular fiction book. So maybe one of those would be up your alley. That is all for today. Thanks so much for joining me. I am glad that my cats chilled out. We will see you next time. Bye.